Flyers through center. It's Michkov, left side. Comes around behind the net. Andre couldn't get it back out in front. Rizzo absorbs a hit. Puck's going to stay in the zone. Bonk is shoved from behind. Rizzo gets it down right side. Michkov trying to pull it in behind the net. It's in! Michkov able to tuck it in.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah, and I'm here with Chef B, who's going to tell us about one of our sponsors here. Chef?
Yeah, O&B Puckcast is now brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. The winter months can be especially hard on our homes, from roof damage and peeling siding to frozen pipes and toilet overflows. Call Summit Public Adjusters before you call your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be stressful and confusing. Let Summit Public Adjusters take the stress out of the claim process by having our guys work for you. Get the most for your money and your repairs. The next time the big snow or the rain leaves you with some home damage, contact us for a free consultation. Summit Public Adjusters are licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Learn more at summitpublicadjusters.com or call 215-752-0560. Just tell them that the chef sent you.
Yeah, what was that number again, Chef?
215-752-0560.
That's terrific. All right, we're going to carry on with the rest of our show. And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 240. As the Philadelphia Flyers have reached the quarter mark, well, 20 games, close enough. And we want to talk about some impressions we have coming off of last night's kind of disappointing performance against the Carolina Hurricanes at the Wells Fargo Center. We're going to talk about that kind of stuff. Before we do, just a reminder, we are brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com and also Jim South Street. 40 years of the best cheesesteaks and hoagies in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. We know you want one. So get down there, 400 South Street in Philly. And if you live down there, use DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever it takes, and get that delicious food right to your door. We know you're going to love it. Jim South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. So let's move along. The great Dan Silver is on assignment tonight, but with me on the panel, as always, or usually, Chef to the left, B. Chef, what's the word for tonight?
The word is, this is what the team is. You know, we warned you. We didn't say anything bad. We're not saying anything bad. You know, Danny's got to work with, and, you know, you were handcuffed, I should say, by a team when you were acquired it. You only could do certain much. So what did people expect? And I know, you know, we'll probably see what Jordan says about that too, but what were your expectations? And gosh, if they weren't going to change halfway through the season, they sure as hell changed now. So
yeah, we'll see. Yeah, and alluding to that, of course, joining us tonight from NBC Sports Philly, Jordan Hall. Welcome back to the O&B Puckcast, Jordan. Glad to have you along.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much, guys. I always enjoyed chatting with you and seeing you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I think you're just about the right guy to speak to tonight. You put out a tweet earlier today, and it's the best time to do it. A comparison after 20 games. Thanksgiving is, you know, next week. So that's a benchmark in the NHL in terms of this is a team you have, and probably not going to be that much different. That is proven in recent years, maybe not to be the case, but just saying, you know, reading from your missive on X today, the Flyers last season, 10-9-1 with a 3.15 goals per game and 2.9 goals allowed per game. This season, they're 8-10-2. They're getting 2.7 goals per game and allowing 3.5 goals per game. And last season, referring to the defensemen, 4 D-men had played in every game. This season, only 2. And of course, I think they played a total of 9 defensemen so far. So there's been a rash of injuries. What's your comment about what are you feeling about what this team is relative to expectations, at least yours?
I think the biggest thing is they just have not had stability on the back end. And I thought they had that early last season when I was looking at the numbers from last season. Those 4 defensemen that played all 20 games to start were Nick Seeler, Sean Walker, Travis Sanheim, Cam York. So those are your 2 top pair defensemen, Sanheim, York, and then also that great second pair that became pivotal to the Flyers' success before they moved Sean Walker in March. And really, Sealer and Walker were probably their best pair in the early going and really going into the trade deadline. And they just haven't had this stability on the back end now. And I think they're feeling that. And you just look at the goals against, 3.5 per game. They just have not been consistently hard to play against. They have not consistently outshot teams. They just haven't looked like a John Tortorella team night in and night out, where I thought last season, even if they were struggling to score, they were preventing goals, they were preventing shots, and they were giving themselves a chance. Just too up and down. And I think it all goes back to stability at the most critical area, and that's the back end defensively and also in net. And last year in net, they had a clear-cut answer in Carter Hart. This year, they've played 3 goalies. Their number 1's been hurt, and the other 2 are rookies with very limited experience. So I think if there's anything reassuring, if you're a Flyers fan or the Flyers, is that I think they have the chance to get right defensively. I think if they get some key pieces back, if they get Ersson eventually back, they have a chance to stabilize and I think be right in the mix like they were last year. But to me, that's what's really hurt them through the first 20 games.
Mm-hmm. Chef?
Well, I'm looking at, if you're going to do a comparison, if you look at last year, how much of those numbers, like we remember last year, I can remember like 3 or 4 games during that beginning stretch. And a lot of people misremember the great start they got off to last year. They didn't get off to that great of a start.
No.
It just, because once you get on the train, you start feeling, yeah, we're all happy. But how much of that great start last year was really Carter Hart and Sam stealing a couple games? If I'm going to look back at the first 20, I would guess they stole about 5, just those 2 together, easily.
Absolutely. And I remember them beating some top end teams. And a lot of it was because their goaltending stood on its head. And
yeah,
Carter Hart is a very good goalie. I think maybe we forgot how good of a goalie he is. I know sometimes he caught a lot of flack for being up and down at times, and some people thought he wasn't elite. And I don't know if he was elite, but he was a very good goalie and was only getting better. And I thought he had a lot of times where when he saw more shots, he was better. So sometimes the Flyers would give up 35 to 40 shots and he'd be excellent and would kind of mask some of the issues that they had. And without a firm answer in net, with Samuel Ersson figuring out how to be a number 1 and then dealing with an injury, and then you have Ivan Fedotov and Alexei Kolosov, two rookies that are just starting to get their feet wet in the NHL. It's tough for the goaltending to mask issues. And if the Flyers have breakdowns, you see it on the scoreboard. And there's been too many nights where early in the season they weren't great. And then most recently, the last 2 games, they've had breakdowns. They mismanage the puck. They are not sharp. And the goaltending really can't save them. So I think if they get Cam York back and they get Samuel Ersson back, I think things will steady a bit. And the good thing is I think they've gotten back to even for the most part. They're 8-10-2, but they just got back to 8-8-2 a couple games ago. And I thought they were starting to feel like, okay, we're back at even. Let's see where we can go from here. But it is ironic when you look at the start last year. 10-9-1 is not all that better. 3 points better than what they are now. And it felt like last year they were way better than this team. So it's interesting.
I think the difference was they had a positive goal differential. I think it was +6 last year. But also, if you look at stats like, expected goals against, scoring chances per game, scoring chances off cycle, and these are numbers I had from last year, slot shots against and all that. And you look at this graphic, and the Flyers are like 1 to 7 in like about 8 or 9 different really important important metrics that are kind of like the cross tabs on a poll or something like that, that are really revealing. And if you look at every one of those numbers now, I can guarantee you all the arrows will be pointing down in comparison. And I think that when you mentioned earlier about the goaltending, the tandem of Ursan and Carter Hart, and losing that top four and that synergy between Steeler, Walker, and if you look at game score, Walker was their best defenseman all year.
Yep.
And that doesn't tell the whole picture. I think there was just a wonderful synergy and even symbiosis between those two guys, the perfect pairing. That's all gone. So if you combine that with the center play, which is underwhelming to say the least, Morgan Frost hasn't really found his groove at all, and I wonder about his future here. Now, outside of Michkov, TK, and his special teams, the PKs is good or better than last year. Special team, I mean the power plays about 4 or 5 percentage points higher than last year's. Okay, we'll take it. Any positives you can get. This is where they're at right now.
Yeah, I think it is. And perhaps we forget that they are still focused on the future and they are rebuilding. And
Yeah.
what happens is last year they overachieve, even though they collapsed, they did overachieve. No one thought they'd be playing meaningful games all the way through game 82. No one thought they'd be in a playoff race. Heck, they would have been a playoff team if they don't lose Carter Hart, if they don't trade Sean Walker, and if they don't collapse. If they somehow just find a win between that 8-game losing streak, they probably
Yeah.
make the playoffs. But that heightens expectations, and it maybe fast forwards things a little bit for people outside following, even us media, that we think this team should be better. So, and I do think they should take some fault as well. They should feel the heat because part of their rebuild is they do want to get better every year. And if they're regressing, that's not exactly aligning with their message. So, they don't have to get better as in be a Stanley Cup contender or be a playoff team, but they should get better. We should see progression from some young players. We should see them kind of do some of the same things they did last season. We haven't seen it. And I think that's where the Flyers should, they should feel some heat for that. Yes, they are rebuilding, but that's no excuse for regression as well.
Yeah, Chef, the thing is, what they're trying to do is maintain this culture while they're going through this bumpy period, and they don't want to just let everything collapse to get higher level talent, because we have Buffalo, we have Ottawa, we have all these examples of teams, even Arizona, that lost for years. And then when they get some talent, they really just can't get it together. When times get tough, they kind of sink. So the Flyers are trying to build that toughness, that resilience, that culture, but it's tough to get that talent. And that's I think the real question, and the divide, and that kind of like they're trying to straddle the fence. What say you?
Well, last year I predicted to the T of what was going to happen with this team. They were going to miss out on the last game of the season. They were going to play meaningful games. I think that they will still play meaningful games this season. I think they get back into the mix. I think they still do what they do. But this year, I think it falls apart a little bit earlier. Just because they don't have the pieces that they had to keep them in it like they did last year. So they missed the playoffs by 68 points. But here, and this is why I'm bringing this up, is it leads to where they play out at the end of the season. Now, you look at other teams that were around them or behind them, there's a good chance the Flyers could drop 2 or 3 slots and be in a position to bargain, not because they were a great team or better or massively better, but there were other people that were worse than them that kind of leapfrogged them in development. I I didn't expect the Devils to be as bad. I didn't expect so all these other teams in the division and in their conference, hell, in the whole league, have gotten a lot better, have leapfrogged them, and I think there's a chance for them to strike at sixth, 7th place, but and then factor in all the picks that they have. I think there's a chance they could get down to 4, maybe. I know people don't want to trade away their number 1 picks, but it's pretty hard to turn down. Like, I'll give you 2 1s and a 2, or 2 2s and a 1 to go up 2 spots. How do you turn that down? And if the Flyers are really that desperate or really think they can get the person they really want that will make the difference, I would do it. I think I would do it in a heartbeat. But that's, I think, where a conundrum is. I mean, if you want to tank without tanking, you keep the status quo. I think that it still builds character with the team. I don't think anybody would sit there and say they're trying to lose or they're trying to tank. And like you said, you cited all those examples. All that does is bring bad culture into a locker room. It took you 2 seasons to get it out. Now you got the locker room straight again, like Torts has said. And whether you believe it, or, you believe in Torts or not, he did. He converted that locker room. He converted his team. That's obvious. So you got to give him some props for that. Is he the coach that take you over the hump and lead you to the promised land of a Stanley Cup? I don't know. That's down the road. That's 3 years down the road, in my opinion. And it might not be him, but that's okay. It can be somebody else. The foundation has to be laid first before you can build a house on top. And I think that's what they're doing. And people forget that. Jordan already mentioned that. Everybody forgets they're still rebuilding. It's 1 year, 1 season, a cash-strapped, salary-capped season that they couldn't do anything with. Now we see the stuff, it might go up. I think you alluded to a number last time we spoke, Isaiah, that it might be in the 92s or 93 million range. Hell, if that's great, that's a little more to play with. And I think that could only benefit the Flyers in that point.
Okay, you're talking about the cap. We're going to learn soon enough that there could be a projection. I don't want to just spit out any number, but the number I saw that it could be as high as like 95 to 97, but it should at least be. Jordan, maybe you know this one. Of course, Elliot Friedman came out with something that next year's cap could be a little higher than they anticipated.
I'm in the same boat as you guys. I did see some reports, but I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. But I did see some reports that it was, I think, from the GM meetings, that it was going to go up rather significantly. And that can only help, I'm sure, the Flyers, given how, like Chef said, they're so cap strapped and, they have a lot of dead money. And part of that was all part of the plan, was to take on some dead money to facilitate getting more picks. But I think when they have some dead money come off and if the cap heightens, the Flyers can maybe be in position to actually spend a little bit. I think the important thing is how far along are they on the ice in their own ice product to be in position to actually want to spend, to attract free agents. And that, I think, we're going to have to wait and see if that aligns the way I think they hope it will.
Says here, catch next year, so far, 92.5 million. That's what Bettman said in October. So we'll see what he says, but it's a little early. So it could even go higher. So, which would be a bonus. So,
yeah, I checked that out. I put a tweet out. Now, because I've been watching this team for so long, and I realized I watched them at a time when there was no cap and all that, I tried to think of where the Flyers are at. I look at a team that has way too many wingers, a lot of duplication, guys that are struggling, and that's really outside of TK and Michkov. They're not getting a lot from their wingers, particularly Forster, Tippett. Farabee is really frustrating right now. Bobby Brink has made improvements in his game. He's faster. He's a little tougher on board battles. Good for him. But the center problem is the elephant in the room. And I'm thinking to myself, the Flyers at 2 junctures in my memory had to make trades to facilitate the ability just to move forward, not even to move them into cup contention or anything. And the 2 that come to mind were one, I know it's go way back, 1972. Effectively, they traded Serge Bernier and Bill Lezouk, 2 forwards, and a couple other guys that didn't really end up doing much, for Bill Flett and Ross Lonsbury, and also Jean Potvin, which is Denny Potvin's older brother, not anywhere near as talented. And I remember reading that, at that time, it really helped put the team in sync. There was a synergy there that just simply didn't exist, or as Red Shiro said, and I paraphrase, after that trade, things made sense. That's one example, and I think it's one actually the most appropriate for where the Flyers are at now. Also, the one that everybody remembers in 95 was the big one, where they traded Mark Recchi and got Eric Desjardins and John Leclerc, and John Leclerc exceeded all expectations and became this winger. I think he was a center in Montreal, and he just exploded and turned into like Tim Kerr plus, for them. But the idea is that the Flyers really had a need to get to another level, to create like a a catalyst within these lines or a synergy that simply didn't exist. And I think the Flyers are at a similar juncture right now. I think when you look at the young wingers, they're not going to trade all these guys away. But I think some of them are really hurting because, Frost hasn't really found his game yet. He even, as we're 8 years past his draft year, it seems like he's only had 2 good half seasons, and they just need more. And it's such a struggle when you have Matvei Michkov playing with, Cates. It's very telling, and with the Couturier, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, I know when the cap era, and as you described, Jordan, it doesn't seem realistic that they could do something, but it just seems like that really is where they need to go right now. You got to shift some personnel around, not trying to necessarily win a trade and get get personnel that's more appropriate for their situation.
Absolutely. Center's a premium position, and the Flyers, that's a weakness. Danny Briere even said it before the draft. They don't have enough centers, and they're trying not to hide from that. It's why they drafted Jet Luchenko at number 13 overall. And Tortorella said it the other day. They're going to be drafting centers because they're so weak at that position. And it absolutely is critical for the Flyers. And their most offensive-minded center, Morgan Frost, just hasn't produced. He's struggled. And maybe he's a second-half player. I think he said that before that, hey, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure what it is with the struggles in the first half, but maybe I am a second-half player, and we'll see if he can get it going at some point. But he's their most skilled and offensive-minded guy, and he's been a healthy scratch because he just hasn't produced. So they're lacking down the middle, and perhaps they can get creative, Isaiah, like you said, with some of the wingers that they have. But they do have, I think, some ingredients to, one, either keep them here and push it forward, or use it as, some trade with trade trips, to see if a team, if they can address an area of need with some of the things they have. Because I'm sure some people think maybe they have a surplus of wingers. Is Joel Farabee a huge part of the future? Owen Tippett, what kind of player is he going to be? Tyson Forster, can he take another step? Like, these are young players that I think the Flyers still feel confident about, but at the same time, they're trying to figure out exactly and project who they're going to be, because there is going to be a point in time where maybe they have to make a tough decision and address an area of need by not just drafting and developing or signing, but also making trades.
Yeah, Chef.
All right. Since we brought up Frost, and I know there's a couple of our listeners who texted me saying, why is he the one getting benched? And obviously, I can only guess that they're not watching the games. They weren't watching games. He was kind of like, even when he was on the ice, he was missing and all that. And I just wanted to, I'll ask you 2 questions. Like, really? Because if he's somebody that they think that they want to move on from and trade, they're going to have to play him, and they're going to have to get some results so people can see that, yeah, he's not done or he's in the mix. But then realistically speaking, I mean, who do you look down this lineup? You had mentioned Farabee, possibly Tippett. Where's some other pieces? I mean, you got, as of right now, unfortunately, you need the surplus of D-men that you have, and you're using it, and thank God you have it, because otherwise we'd have maybe like AHLers manning the forts like we did last year a little bit for a time. But like, who will get you any kind of yield back? And you'll have to package it, I guess, with some of those picks that I had previously mentioned, correct?
Potentially, but I do think some young players that, if the Flyers are so on, they're not exactly sure if they're a huge part of the future and they want to get creative. I think these players do have appeal. I absolutely do. Like the Bobby Brinks, the Joel Farabees, the Tyson Forsters, Owen Tippett, just signed a long-term extension. I don't think he's going anywhere. But some of these players that I think are kind of middling right now, and they're not exactly taking the next step, at least as of right now in the first 20 games, I think they still have a ton of appeal. I mean, Joel Farabee was a one-and-done college kid who was a first-round pick, and 24, I think, has all situation potential. Bobby Brink, was one of the best college scorers and has won a national championship. And I think he's maybe one of the more creative playmakers the team has. So I think the Flyers could, if they were to listen on these guys, I think they could get something nice in return. I think these players do have value, even if they're struggling. I do feel like the Flyers can sell them high and get value in return.
Now, what about a player like Ristolainen? Like I have said, I defended him before. I thought that contract would pretty much age pretty well. It looks like it has now. I mean, with him, working with the D coaches and stuff like that, he's really settling in. He's quite possibly one of their top 3 best defensemen this season so far. I mean, with the possibility of a cap going up, like we talked about, I mean, his picking up him at the trade deadline and next season really could be a deal for somebody else, don't you think? Especially a contender.
I think the Flyers are going to have a lot of calls on him because he just plays like a playoff player. Contending teams love defensemen like him that embrace physicality. He's big. He can skate with the puck. I think it's kind of identified how he wants to play. And the Flyers have showcased him pretty well. He's been getting top pair minutes because of the injuries that they've had, and he's finally healthy. I think the biggest challenge will be the money on his deal and the term. I believe this is the 3rd of 5 years. I think he's still got this season and the following 2. So that could scare some teams away with the money that he makes and the term that's left. But I think the Flyers, of course, will be open to eating some salary if a team comes to them and is offering them a 1st or 2nd round pick. Again, so much time to go. We're in November and the trade deadline's not until March. But one guy that has, I think, potential to be like a Sean Walker type of trade chip is Rasmus Ristolainen. Because of the way he plays, contending teams loving that style of play. I think he's got a bit of a track record. People know him around the league. I think he's going to have some suitors, and it's fair to wonder if he fits the Flyers timeline at this point. Does he really have a huge role in their future? I'm not sure. If they're starting to take a step back this season, he might not. And the Flyers, I think, are going to look long and hard about potentially moving him. And he's eager to play in the playoffs. He's never played in the playoffs in his entire career. And he said he is dying to play in the playoffs. So I think he'd be open to it. And not that he doesn't want to be here, but I think he'd be open to playing in the playoffs and getting a shot. And the Flyers could maybe give him his wish and also get something nice in return for their rebuild.
Yeah, it's possible. I think that, if you look at some of the media reports between Elliot Friedman, the Daily Faceoff, including our buddy Anthony DeMarco, has talked about interest in Brink and Farabee in Minnesota. Anthony doesn't generally throw stuff out there. There's no particulars per se. There's interest in Frost, but not. It's kind of frosty right now. And also Ristolainen's been on the, yeah, they like that one. It's Ristolainen's the guy. I think that's more of a trade deadline thing, but that's where they're at right now. I think they need that kind of trade, and maybe it's going to take a while to get there. Maybe you need some more accrued cap space, something that you were alluding to as well. But there have been some good news stories. Let's start with what I think is the best good news story. We're going to get to Matvey in a minute, but I want to talk about Emil Andre, because not only did he come up and play well, and we know he's injured right now. If he has oblique injury, perhaps, we're not exactly sure. But he played fearlessly, aggressively. He helped the power play in a way that we were hoping Jamie Drysdale would. And it looks like if he can just stay healthy, he could be a keeper. What's your feeling? What's your sense about this player and what the brass thinks about him?
The Flyers have always been high on him. I've had people in the organization and outside speak super highly of him, but you never really know how a prospect's going to develop until they get to the next level, until they get to the NHL and they kind of show it. And once he got his opportunity this season, he really jumped all over it. And I think everyone saw what the Flyers and many other people were believing Andre had. And that was a smaller kid that competes his tail off, has great composure with the puck, makes plays up the ice. And I think, yes, I'm with you, Isaiah. That's one of the biggest surprises, positive surprises, because I think the Flyers still need more answers defensively. As much as we've talked about maybe the talent deficiency up front and who's going to be a part of this, who's not. I mean, defense is just so important. And I think they're still looking for more answers. And Andre's looking like he could be one. Now, it's early, it's a small sample size, but man, if you have a 22-year-old defenseman like him who's looking like he could play in all situations, it gives you one more guy to maybe build around. And I think they're excited about Cam York. I think they're excited about Travis Sanheim. Of course, I still think there's still plenty of hope around Jamie Drysdale, even though things have been rocky at first. And then you have Emil Andre. So the more options, the better on the back end. But I had heard so many really, really good things. I had two people comparing the Chemo Timonen, and it was high praise, but it told me that it wasn't just a one and done comparison. There was more people that saw some Chemo Timonen in him, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of it early on here. And I think the Flyers will take that. They're excited that a guy can step in like that and play the way he has and kind of force their hand.
Yeah, I think the thing about Chemo that people forget, Emil Andre is 22 playing this way. I doubt if Chemo at 22 was this good. We got him when he was 32. And I think, we got about 4 or 5 really good years out of him, had a terrific career. So, I got to say, though, one thing popped in my mind about him. He just had another level in terms of fearlessness. It's like, I'm going for it. He kind of fell on his face a little bit in that Carolina game on the road. But other than that, he was, tell you, I was like, yeah, that's what we need, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of times where I remember when I first saw him a couple years ago in the rookie games, and he was taking these huge hits to make a play, which people love. They love their defensemen to be tough. You got to take a hit to make a play. But he was taking some shots, and I was like, oh, boy, like this. I don't know if he can make it at this next level if he's going to continually take a beating. But every time he just popped right back up. Like he never stayed down. Just told me there was a toughness to him. And a real competitiveness to him. And he doesn't care about being smaller. Like he plays big. And you need guys that play with some moxie and some confidence, and he has it. So he likes to play big minutes, and to see him have this type of success early on, I think is really pleasing to the Flyers. It just gives you another option defensively at an important position.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And something just popped in my mind. I mean, we had our little trade mention section there. Another name that's out there is very interesting because the Flyers had a choice in 2022, and apparently 2 or 3 players were on the radar. Well, obviously, Cutter Gauthier was their selection, but right after him, selected by Columbus, was a player that they surely looked at by the name of David Jiricek. He is a guy who probably has a higher ceiling than even a player like Oliver Bonk or any other, even Emil Andre, who we're talking about and getting excited about. And yet they I think they've kind of mishandled this player. I know you're not into the rumor trade per se, but that's a very intriguing possibility. And we have Russ Cohen and some of these draft guys out there saying, hey, if this guy's going to get moved and you're the kind of team that's looking for a number 1 defenseman, he has that potential.
Yeah, I loved Jiricek in his draft year. He was the guy I actually thought the Flyers were going to take. I think I had.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in an article and probably on some podcasts and radio hits, people were asking me for a prediction. I thought it was going to be David Jiricek. I loved his game. And again, it's just another route, Isaiah. Absolutely. If you don't have to just compile picks. You can look at younger players on other teams, and perhaps they really like David Jiricek from his draft year, and they'd be open to that. So I think they just need to be creative. They need to be open to being creative. It can't just be cookie cutter, get picks and move out players. It has to be looking at everything. And I think they have been creative. They've taken on money to facilitate trades. They've added more picks. They've taken on sometimes a younger player in a deal. I think they have to be open-minded to everything. And I think Briere will. I really do think he's open for business. I think he has from day one. We'll just see where the team is come February, March, and maybe how aggressive he's going to be looking to be. Because if things aren't working, you do have to look to make adjustments. I'm not sure everyone thought every single season of the rebuild would be this smooth rise. It was going to hit some bumps, and if you hit bumps, you got to pivot. I think Briere, I expect him to be open to that.
Yeah, well, we're all hoping so. Now, one of the best stories outside of the Mad Russian has been what people refer to as the Travi. Chef, Travis Konecny leads the Flyers in goals and points, 11 goals, 12 assists for 23 points. And his running buddy, Travis Sanheim, is the Flyers' best defenseman far and away, 5 goals, 7 assists for 12 points. And both of these guys are mentioned as candidates for Team Canada with upcoming First Nations tournament that is the reason why all these games are so compacted together. So, Chef, let me get your impressions about the Travi and what you've seen, and that's definitely one of the good news stories this year.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I can only assume you mean that's the Latin for plural for Travis.
Yes,
Travises,
I don't know.
or it's Travi, I guess.
Travi,
Asparaguses. I
it's
don't know,
yeah,
but either
it's
way, it works.
it's the Flyer,
Yeah,
Twitter,
fly era. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
X,
gotcha.
yeah.
So I think yeah, they've been like great. I mean, you're getting hopefully, and if people couldn't see it over the years, you shouldn't be surprised about Sanheim. I mean, he's had these flourishes over the years of where he's played really good hockey, and thought he could be a number two. But now you're just getting the bonus stuff. He's just acts like a number one. Geez, his minutes were up over like 30 the other night, wasn't it? The 2 games. It was like, boy, he just went. If somebody just hit a button on it, it's like when you're playing a video game and you click on, you get the magic mushroom and you power up and all. It just seems like all of a sudden he just powered up and he's just killing it. And Konecny, he's just like everywhere on the ice. When he's on there, he's, I mean, it seemed like if his line is out there, he's touching the puck more than anybody else out on the ice combined. He is handling it. Sometimes, I swear to God, we're going to see it. One of the JJ's going to call it. He's going to pass the puck to himself a couple times because it seems like he's everywhere on the ice. But they've been awesome, and you can't discount that. I think he's like on pace for like 90 something points this season. If he does that, that would be hell. That would be record breaking for us for a while now. So I don't think we've had anybody that high in a long time. So that would be amazing. I think as part of the nations tournament, more power to it. I think the more hockey that's out there for people to see and enjoy, they'll love it. Because if you look at it now, games are a little compacted. And I don't know about you, but I'm loving it because I'm getting like hockey 2 or 3 times a week, my team. And then I'm seeing the stuff late at night and it's awesome. And then now you're going to tell me we're going to see, hey, those favorite players you have on another team. And now you get to root for them because they're playing on Team USA and you used to hate them because they're on the other team. That was part of like the All-Star game allure when we were younger, like when it was East versus West, and all that. And when they went to the Olympics, you got to be able to root for Sidney Crosby or somebody you hated along those lines, but not Matthew Barnaby. I never wanted to root for him. I always wanted to hate him. He has a special place in my heart.
I don't think he made those. I don't think he made those teams though.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I was just giving an
yeah.
example. So I think it's the best thing they could have for hockey right now is a little bit of a compressed schedule because now they got the big they're on ESPN, they're on TNT. You get it, you can download it, you can get it in a lot of more places than you could before. The quality, they'll work on it. I get the feeling that they'll make it better. The product that they're putting in some, you hear people complaining about the national games. They're not like what they used to be, but they'll get there. You got to give them time. This is all new for them. I remember the NFL in the 80s. They weren't, it wasn't the best broadcasters out there either. So they're reaching people they never reached before. And if they get this Four Nations tour and they get it in the middle of an NHL season, it's all compacted. And I just think it'll just grab more people and you'll have more viewers and people that find the game, they fall in love with the game. So,
Chef, I had no idea you love the Four Nations tournament idea so much.
well, no, well, I love international hockey. And I love the fact that if we could get all that together, that's how you grow your product. But if you think about it, it's customer acquisition. Hockey is like any other sport. How are you going to get it out there? You got to reach new people, and having new different tournaments your stadium series, the Winter Classic, stuff like that. That's it. I mean, I know people that only watch the Winter Classic because they think it's so cool. That's it. Don't care about hockey, but they watch that. Why? Oh, it's just neat that they're playing on a football field or on a baseball field or whatever. They love it. They love the idea of it. They're not sold on hockey yet, but this is a way to get them in, and I think that's the best thing that NHL could do for themselves.
Okay. Jordan,
Yeah,
you want to
I'll
weigh
shut
in
up.
on that? Yeah. Now, you want to weigh on that, and also maybe your impressions about what the Travi are doing this year.
Yeah, with the All-Star break, this replaces that, and to me,
Right.
the All-Star festivities really kind of lost its straw for me. I don't really look forward to it. It's just something about it that it doesn't really appeal to me. So I'm with Chef. I think this is going to be competitive hockey. It's going to emulate the Olympics a little bit, where guys are playing for their country, some of the best players from each country, and some of the best players in the world. So I'm intrigued by it. I think it'll be cool. And I think it's a good idea that the NHL thought of something different than just the All-Star break. We haven't really seen the Olympics with NHL players being able to play. So this is a kind of a cool replacement of getting some Olympic style hockey of some of the best players in the world competing for their country. And I think fans will get behind it. And yeah, Konechny and Sanheim have been great. If you're looking for two guys that have actually been night in, night out players, those are the two for the Flyers. They've had so much inconsistency as a team and a number of young players and some older veterans as well. But the two constants have been those two players. And perhaps they are good reminders that sometimes you hold on to these younger players and they might develop into something. Konechny had heard trade wins for a while. So did Sanheim. He was nearly dealt after year one under Tortorella, and he happens to still be here. And all of a sudden he's looking like a bona fide number one defenseman. Konechny had kind of flirted between the 24 to 26 goal range and never really took a huge step, and the Flyers stuck with him. And now, he's looking like a guy that can lead this thing. So it doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes you hold on to too long for a player, but I think these are two good examples of drafting, developing, sticking with guys when they struggled through their early 20s, and then maybe they develop into something in their late 20s. And Konechny and Sanheimer, I think good examples that the Flyers can maybe look back on and kind of remember as they evaluate some of these guys that are in their 24, 25-year range.
Yeah. Certainly Sanheim. And you always saw something with Konechny. You would always see a flash like, well, that guy should be a 30-goal scorer. And of course, he finally gets there. But what would you say the status is right now of guys like Igor Zamula and Jamie Drysdale? Of course, Jamie Drysdale is a little bit more invested with the player relative to the Gauthier situation. I saw them practicing. He was working with their skills coach down at the skate zone. Is it Angelo Ricci?
Yes.
Yeah. And they were concentrating. I had Steeler out there in the beginning of the drill where he was passing the puck to Drysdale at the right point and coming on like a forechecker. And they practiced either beating the forechecker, going around and getting a chance on the goalie, or, driving toward the net, passing quickly to Steeler, or something I think they want to do more from him, walking the line, squaring himself up and getting a shot. And they were doing that, rep after rep after rep. But when he was in the blue jersey, he's not ready for contact yet. So what's your impressions of him first and then maybe Zamula?
I think they're really trying to unlock Drysdale offensively. There's just so much upside there, and he's faulted a little bit, but you can see the ability, and he's only 22. It's such a tough position. It's probably the toughest position in terms of development curve other than goalie. And so I think the Flyers are being patient here. Would they love probably more results early on from the Drysdale Cutter Gauthier trade? Sure. But again, young player, 22, and a kid that I think cares. He works hard. He's battled injuries. He's fighting the whole injury-prone label, and he's trying to work his way back and kind of shake that label and produce. But they, I think, want to unlock him offensively because the more he plays offense, the less he's playing defense behind him. So the Flyers would love to see him keep that puck in the offensive zone, keep the puck on his stick, move it quickly, and just create things in the offensive zone and up ice. So they're playing less defense. And that's where Drysdale obviously needs to learn a lot and develop a lot is defensively. and I think he's trying there. But if he's playing more offense, the Flyers love it because the puck's out of their end and they're taking it to a team. And if they can unlock him offensively, I think they're going to be a lot better. And Sealer, I think they're hoping can help him get that puck up ice and kind of fuel his confidence offensively. With Zamula, real quick, I will say, I think they're still holding out hope for him. I think he's played better recently. He fought it early. I think his confidence was taking a couple of hits here and there, but there's still some ability there. And I think the Flyers aren't ready to give up on him. If I had to pick that one that they're maybe higher on, it might be Drysdale. He's just younger, and he came in the trade that they had to give up on Gauthier. But I still think they believe Zamula can be a player, and they're going to work with him. So I think it's positive that he's played better recently in the last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, Chef.
So with Zamula, I'd seen an interview with Torts about how they were trying to, in real time, talk to Mitchkov and try to coach him, but the whole translation thing wasn't there. And he actually said, I think he said that he was using, Z to help him out there, and he thought that was hurting Z's game because he was trying to translate and technically worry about Mitchkov said. So he stopped doing that, and that's where Z's game started to come back. I mean, I didn't know that was happening. Probably a lot of us didn't know that was happening. You're around the team more. I guess you could see that. Could you see that develop after that stopped happening?
Yeah, you could see it, and you could also hear it from other guys. And Tortorella, they openly talked about they used Zamula as a translator when they were on the ice or in film sessions, and they believed it got to be too much. And maybe they had him thinking too much, and he's worried so much about translating and maybe not worried as much about playing. And maybe it was just a little too much on him. And I thought I give John Tortorella credit for recognizing that and saying, you know what, we're doing this. We're abusing it. Let's let Igor Zamula just focus on him. And I think it has helped. Zamula also told me the other day that his dad visited him from Russia. His dad's been in Philadelphia, been visiting him, and Zamula said it's just kind of freed his mind up a little bit. He just talks to his dad, and he feels like he's at home again. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he's been playing better when his dad's been visiting. So a couple of things there. I think Zamula's just having fun again, and I think he's not worried about translating, which has helped. So I thought that was a good thing for the Flyers to recognize that and say, you know what, we got to talk to Mishkov ourselves. We got to use the whiteboard. We got to use diagrams, video. We got to connect with him and start making him learn from us, not so much through Zamula.
Yeah, so John Tortorella apparently in a feature on TNT last night talking about how they meet with him once a week and he has a one-on-one with a translator.
Yes, I believe I heard that on TNT and also through ESPN's Emily Kaplan said that the Flyers had a plan in place to kind of meet with him one-on-one every week and using Slava Kuznetsov, who's a team consultant, also a skating coach. So I think they're trying to use some people and communicate and make sure Tortorella and Mishkov are on the same page and make sure he's just comprehending things. I mean, sometimes even if you speak English, you might not comprehend something perfectly from a coach. I can only imagine doing it with a language barrier. So hopefully that kind of cuts out the unknown and some gray areas with communication, and they kind of start to make sure they're hitting on that and make sure he's developing and understanding things.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we talk about Matt Vey? He's 18 games. Of course, the two big games that he misses, scratching. Elliot Friedman comes out and said there's, there was a so-called incident or something happened on the bench. It wasn't a big deal, but it was the kind of thing where they had to send a message early, and nobody got into real detail about it. I certainly wouldn't ask you about it, but he's moved past it. He's got 6 goals, 9 assists for 15 points. I think he still leads all the rookies in scoring at this time as we record this. And he's not the reluctant shooter that most of the other forwards have been, kind of like TK and maybe Tippett. That's certainly one thing Tippett is not shy about, is shooting the puck. And he's been more or less everything we thought that, we thought he could be. And we know that it's only going to get better. What are your overall impressions about the player and maybe some insights that the folks want to know at home that we can't see just by watching him?
Yeah, and not to speculate too much, but I don't mind talking on it. I think that there might have been an incident, and I watched it at the end of one of the games where Mishkov was on the bench, final minute of the game, final seconds. It was a frustrating loss, I think, for the Flyers. And Mishkov and Tortorella were getting into it a little bit, just talking. And I saw Eric Johnson, who happened to be sitting right next to Mishkov, probably the perfect person to be sitting next to him,
Yeah.
kind of consoling him, patting him on the back, saying it's okay. And you could tell he was trying to be supportive. And I don't know if that was the incident, but it was right around the time when Mishkov ended up getting benched. So perhaps there was some miscommunication and some frustration between the coach and player, and that might have been it. But I do think they've gotten past that, and they're trying to communicate better. But overall impressions of Mishkov is just he is so high-end talent. He is talent we haven't quite seen here in Philadelphia in a while, and the Flyers have been starving for it. That's the word John Tortorella used, and I think it's a perfect word. They've been starving for his type of offensive playmaking and just the way he sees the ice and the way he's a daring player. He loves to score and take daring type of chances, and he's a guy I think you can build around, and that's a real positive. The Flyers have needed more high-end talent, and he is high-end talent. So I think the Flyers are trying to play through his struggles from the full length of the rink. Like, let him play through that. He's not going to be perfect defensively. He's not going to be perfect through all three zones, but he's really good in that one zone, and that's the offensive zone. Let him play to his strengths. And I think if they do that and they're willing to go through the growing pains of the other areas, they can really help him. So I think he's been great for fans to come and see. I think I've noticed an attendance increase. I think some games have been really impressive in terms of fans coming to watch him play. And I think a lot of it has to do with Matvei Mishkov. He's a player they've been able to market and also showcase. And to see him produce the way he has, I think has been real positive. I think there's been more positives than negatives in terms of production. For the most part, he has been there and he's making things happen. And that's a real good thing.
Yeah. Chef?
I think I'll worry about his two-way play in year 5. I'm not too concerned about that right now. I mean, let's get to the playoffs before I have to worry about him playing defense at that level.
Yeah.
I will say this though, for the pace, and I wasn't that upset that he sat a couple games. I mean, we talked about it on the last show with the Time I Skates guy crew, and we were talking about it, and I said, yeah, he's never played more than 50 games in a season, or 56 maybe, I think it was. So it's not unheard of to think that he's going to hit a wall, especially in this compressed schedule like they're in. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch the KHL games. I never watched them. It's too difficult to see what you're trying to find or whatever. It's for me anyway. It was, and I just sit there and I think, well, every once in a while he's probably going to have to take a back seat because I mean, we've seen it with the AHL kids and coming out from OHL and college even, that they hit a wall and it's just like boom, because this pace is so much better. It's such a bigger pace, a longer schedule, and you're on the road hell of a lot more than you were ever in your life. And it does take a toll on you mentally and physically. And sometimes you need a reset. I think it's pretty reasonable. And would you expect to see him maybe get like a couple more sittings, maybe somewhere later in the season, maybe 2 or 3 benchings, and not because he's playing bad, so to speak, just to give him a reset. Let his
Like
bodies
load
adjust.
management?
Load
Load management kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, the kid's 19. I mean, we're expecting a lot from this kid already, and just let him go out there, let him play hockey. But you got to save. Remember what we were like when we were 19 boys. I know you probably can remember, Jordan. You're probably a lot younger than me and Isaiah here, but I thought I was a freaking Avenger. When I was 19, I was fighting bad guys left and right. But I didn't know my limitations, and now I'm paying for it now. So we don't want our superstar to do that to himself.
That was the one thing that I noticed, and I didn't love the benching. I wasn't sure how much a player like Matvei Mishkov would really benefit from watching. I know Tortorella likes when a young guy can watch. I think some players probably do benefit. I'm not sure a competitive kid like him is going to benefit from watching. But the one thing I thought was he looked tired before he was benched. I just thought he did not look like he had a ton of juice to him, and maybe he was wearing down. And then 2 games after being, benched, or I'm sorry, the game after the 2 games being benched, I thought he looked rejuvenated, reinvigorated.
Yeah.
I just thought he had some serious giddy up to him. And I think a couple things happened. One, he was ticked off he got benched and was ready to play. And two, I think he felt rested. And
Yeah.
so absolutely, the Flyers have, they have guys that study the science stuff and they really look at load levels. So perhaps they do keep an eye on that and will find times to maybe get him a breather. I don't think that would be the worst thing. But if he's
Yeah.
playing well and he says he wants to play, I hope they keep sticking with him. But absolutely, I don't think it's an awful thing if maybe down the line he sits another game purely for rest and maybe just to get it, like you said, mental reset, watch some video, watch a game, and boom, get back in there.
Well, now this Saturday coming up, they're playing the Blackhawks. Do you think we can expect to see him and Bedard drop the gloves and go at it? I would love to see that, but I don't want it to happen. But I think it'd be fun.
The whole hockey world would love that. I mean, that would be clipped probably everywhere on the internet, social media, you name it, it will go everywhere. I don't expect them to drop the gloves, but I do think both of them are going to want to play to their
Yes.
game.
I think it's going to be a game worth watching, yes, because I think both of them are going to bust out all the stops.
Yeah, they competed in the U18s, and they both put on shows, and they were both kind of going back and forth. It was like a title fight, and I think knowing Mishkov, he understands the other young players that are up there with him, and he likes to compete against those guys. And Bedard, I imagine, I don't know him, never covered him, I haven't interviewed him before, but I imagine he is probably the same way. He's going to get up for that game. I think it'll be fun. I mean, a Saturday afternoon in Philadelphia with those 2 players on the ice, I think it's going to be worth the price of admission.
Yeah, from what I understand, had they moved Bedard to the wing? Because I heard discussion on Hockey Canada on Saturday. I think it was a past Saturday or prior, about moving him to the wing. I don't know if they've actually done that yet, but that would kind of make it interesting as well.
I thought I heard through word of mouth, it was maybe at like a morning skate the other day, that someone in the media room said that he had maybe gotten bumped down the lineup a little bit, but I didn't know about the position stuff. So yeah, I don't know if Chicago maybe has cut back on his minutes a little bit through some struggles, because I don't think he's off to the best start.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think they want to protect him. They still project him at center, but
Yeah.
they think that, at his size and everything, and early in his career, because he too is only 19. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Speaking of centers, I know we talked about Morgan Frost earlier, but it was interesting that Morgan came up again in Elliot Friedman's written 32 thoughts, that he was saying Chicago is looking for centers. Morgan Frost is having a tough time in Philadelphia. It just seems like a match. And I don't know, when Elliot says something like that, it's almost like he didn't say he had heard anything specific, but it's almost like not saying he was spitballing makes me think there could have been a conversation, because Chicago really is desperate at center ice almost as much as the Flyers, if not more.
Yeah, and Elliot Freeman's so plugged in, and it maybe wasn't something he had heard from people in the Flyers organization or Chicago's organization.
Right.
It might have been people around the game who maybe said, hey, you know what? Chicago might make sense here. Here's why, or here's what I heard. No, I'm with you. He's probably not just throwing that out there to throw it out there. He had probably heard from some people that, hey, perhaps Chicago could be a good fit, and here's why. But Morgan might just look at Morgan Frost like he's a change of scenery candidate. And to me, change of scenery is when just pressure becomes too much here. Things didn't mesh. Yeah, I get the sense from Morgan a little bit that he wants to play well, and he's just worn down probably mentally through all the stuff he's gone through with the head coach. And eventually, maybe, yeah, he would play a lot more freely for another team where a change of scenery makes sense. I'm not saying it's there yet. Again, I think it's so early. I do not think the Flyers have given up on him yet. But of course, it's something to monitor if he continues to struggle and things don't really mesh with him and the coach. I mean, he's not a John Tortorella type of player. I don't think he ever has been. I think Tortorella has grown to appreciate some of the things he does and the effort he puts in other areas that he wants to see. but they haven't just 100% connected yet in terms of style of play. And Morgan comes with pedigree. So I think teams will be interested, and they might know that, yes, it has not connected yet with Frost in Philadelphia. Let's look in on it.
Yeah, and it's a shame because he's really, really a likable kid, and he's
Yes.
worked hard. There's a lot to root for there. Obviously, you see the skill. It hasn't translated on a consistent basis. So yeah, it's not here to pick on the player. I personally don't think he has the future here for the reasons that you cited. But it's not like I don't like the player or he's somebody who's not trying. I don't see that with him. He's
Yeah.
trying the best, and maybe it's just a stylistic thing with the player and the coach, like you said. So
Yeah, and it's not to like baby him or be like, "Oh, Morgan, you got," like, it's more just like I can tell like he almost cares too much, and I think it starts to affect him. So it's hard to fault a guy for really wanting to be better and caring, and then it hurts him. Like if that's his flaw is caring too much, that's not a bad flaw. But yeah, you can just tell it's wearing on him. Just things have not gone, I think, how the Flyers have hoped, how he has hoped. It's been really tough with John Tortorella and him. They just have not clicked. And I thought Tortorella gave him a lot of leash this year. I didn't disagree when he sat him. I thought Frost had his chances really to keep getting out there, playing in good situations, get things going. They were really needing offense down the middle, and he has not provided it. And I think it got to a point where they thought they had to sit him. And Tortorella said it the other day. He's going to wait his turn, and when he gets back in, I'm hoping he shows up. So it's going to be up to Frost. And I was talking to him off the other day, just off record a little bit, and he was saying, not to give you the whole conversation, but he was just saying, like, I think I just need a game where I score a goal, a confident goal, something along those lines, and he thinks it'll get him going. So, the other day he scored, but it went off his skate. So maybe that didn't exactly boost his confidence. Maybe he gets a game where he puts up a goal and assist, and suddenly that confidence comes back, and he has been a second half player. So we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. Right now, through 16 games, when he's on the ice, there are 60 more shot attempts against than for. So he's a little bit of hole in that regard. It's not the be all end all of stats,
Sure.
but it's probably a little bit better in plus minus, which is also is not right now is not really that good. So, Chef, any final thoughts in regard to what we've seen so far for the team before we ask Jordan what he thinks is going to happen going forward? The fearless predictions.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I think they fall about 6 points short of playoffs this year. I'm just curious that with what you've seen in the list, that let's just say they don't make any moves and he stands pat and they kind of go with what they got. Uh, I still don't believe it's a playoff team. Do you, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm starting to think differently. I was so back and forth before the season. Originally, I thought they were not going to make the playoffs. I ended up predicting that they would because I was so impressed with Mishkov in rookie camp in preseason that I looked at him as like a major free agent addition. And then I thought with Mishkov and Tortorella's track record in year 3 of teams is very good. So I predicted playoffs, but right now they've just been too up and down for me to really sit here and confidently say, like, absolutely, they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to be in it, but I do not know if they are going to be a playoff team. I just haven't seen it consistently enough. Too many up and down swings, and also just their young players have not gotten better the way I expected them to.
Yeah.
Not saying that can't happen, but so far through a quarter away, just haven't seen the progress to believe like I can confidently say this team will be playing playoff hockey in Philadelphia come April.
Yeah. I guess the only two questions are players I have questions about. How do you think the situation with Alexei Kolosov is going to resolve? Whether you think he'll stay here, would he take a demotion? Can they stay with 3 goalies? Or will he go back to Dynamo Minsk in the KHL? That's its own little subplot there.
Oh, it is, and it's just so hard to predict. It's tough to tell. It has been getting better. The fact that he's here, the fact that he got games this early, I think was a positive. I think the Flyers are trying to work with him. The fact that they gave him a look so early, I think tells me they were trying to meet his demands a little bit. He had thought he should be in the NHL. He had been wanting to play in the NHL, and they were like, you know what? We're going to stick to our word. If Fedotov struggled, let's give you a look. And but it's tough to tell where it's going to go because Fedotov's been up and down. Kolosov hasn't exactly lit the world on fire. So I think it's going to be very much game-to-game basis. Like, if Fedotov answers the bell, he's probably knocking Kolosov down a few ladders. Kolosov's going to get a couple more games here. So it's up to him to play well and try to change their minds. But I really think it's game-to-game right now. That's how close it is in terms of the backup race and where things go from here. But I imagine he'll be open to going back to Lehigh Valley if he didn't perform well. I think he'll be open to it. He went down and reported after reporting the training camp. He said he was open to playing for the Phantoms, and he did. So we'll see where it all goes. But I will be completely honest. It's a tough one to predict.
Gotcha. And as far as the next call-up, we've seen Helge Grans, we've seen Emil Andre, and Anthony Richard has had a nice little run, even though he's kind of like a tweener or what they might call a quad A player. He's used to speed effectively. Is there anybody else with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms that could come up and maybe either win a spot or fill the void if Flyers made a trade or,
Well, I think they're going to keep an eye on Jennings. I think Adam Jennings is a guy that they believe in, that when they're in a pinch, they can rely on him. He's typically a pretty steady, low-key guy. When he's playing well, you don't recognize him type of guy. And one guy I noticed that I think's been picking it up offensively is Ola Lexell. I think Tortorella really liked his camp. He smiled when I even asked him about him. Like, Ola Lexell didn't make the team, but he had a good camp. And Tortorella really was like, yeah, he did. He gave us a good decision to make. But they were so hell-bent on, I think, giving Jet Luchenko a look that Lexell was the odd man out. But Lexell's starting to gain some steam down there offensively. And the Flyers are not scoring. They are not scoring consistently. So if they're looking for a shot in the arm at some point, I think Lexell might get a look. So I would keep an eye on Lexell. Wouldn't rule him out. He's a guy that I think can give you maybe a shot in the arm offensively. And he had a good camp. So I don't think the Flyers are going to I think they're going to want to eventually reward him for his camp and the momentum he's building down in Lehigh.
Gotcha. Chef, do you have any final questions for Jordan?
No, I think we covered a lot. It was Jordan, you've been an awesome guest. Thank you very much, as always.
Oh, guys, I love coming on. It's great to see you guys and great just to talk of Flyers hockey, and always enjoy following all the podcasts you guys are churning out. So keep it up, and anytime you want me, I'm happy to come on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Where can people find your work on the various platforms? I know a lot of people are also going to Blue Sky or whatever, but wherever people can find you, I know you're at NBCSportsPhilly.com.
Yeah, you can find me on X at JHallNBCS, and my Flyers work, as you mentioned, Isaiah, at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. And I recently made an Instagram to be posting some pictures and videos from games and practices and skates. So you can find me also on Instagram there. So I'm starting to do that a little bit more and try to post some more visuals for my coverage there.
Oh, fantastic. Jordan, thanks for joining us, man. And hope we come on and we'll see you down the road very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. You take care.
You as well. Thanks, guys.
Right. So, Chef, not too many people work harder than Jordan following the team and getting some inside information about what's going on down there. You get a real feel for what's happening. This is a team that really was 1-5-1, and like Jordan said earlier, they got back to 500, 8-8-2, and then of course they had the 2 losses in a row. Colorado were outgunned, and Carolina they were more or less outclassed, especially in the third period. So that's where it's at, man. Philadelphia Flyers, I think, I still maintain that they are going to have to make some kind of personnel shifting trade. So even within the context of a rebuild, there's no reason to suffer and have this inequity in the lineup. That's the way I think. I think it'll help the rebuild because things will make more sense. The lineup, the pieces will fit a little bit better. And I think it's worth doing, even if you had to give up one of these draft picks, not their own. You want to hang on to that, like this year's first, but some of the others, like Colorado's or Edmonton's, whatever, along with a player. And there's people out there right now that I respect very highly that are talking in those terms. Like even for Jiricek, moving, a player, but just getting more talent. But I think the center position is so dire right now.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna, I guess Jet Luchenko is not going to be the answer right away. That's a year or two away at least, and I think the team makes some kind of move, whether they pull the Band-Aid off with Morgan Frost or they end up going the whole Farabee or Brink and Ristolainen and all the other names we put. They will get a center, I think, before the start of next season. I think that's inevitable. I think that's completely necessary, whether they sign a free agent or whatever. But also, it's going to be hard because, like you said, you're going to have to part with one of your number one picks, I think, to get the player that you kind of want because you really don't have the best to offer back going back the other way in a player in a lot of their players with so many players, except underperforming in the offensive category. You have Ristolainen that's performing very good, if not above average. But it's that you got to have something to sweeten the pot in order to get what you want, and you might overpay a little bit, and you might have to. So, but that's the cost of rebuilding, and you might have to do it. So, yeah. But I predict they will do something, but before the start of next season, don't get their guy.
I think they're going to do something this season, but they have to. I don't, it's just my instinct. I could be totally wrong. I just don't see that he can continue just running Noah Cates out there with Michkov and relying on Couturier, who could break down at any minute. He's already missed time, and I don't know. It seems like we're at that point, but we're going to wrap it up there. You can follow us at the O&B Puckcast on X at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. Also on Getter, just a platform that we also post our stuff on at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. And Chef, where can people find you?
You can find me at Chef the Left B on Twitter. Chef2, the number 2, Left B on Twitter.
You can find it. Right. Exactly. People, it's interchangeable. And the great Dan Silver can be followed at dsilver88, at dsilver88 on X. Of course, you can follow us on multiple podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon, Audible, Deezer. We have a YouTube page. Just plug in there O&B Puckcast. It pop right up there. And a Facebook page. And if you could follow us, particularly on Spotify and Apple, we really do appreciate it. Apple, if you could give us a review, we'll definitely read it on the air. We do appreciate it. We've had some really good ratings, and we hope to maintain that. And when you do that, it helps move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts, for sure. So we are not going to have a show till after Thanksgiving. We're going to give a little bit of a break, but we'll be back on Monday, December the 2nd, and the Flyers will have played versus Chicago and Vegas at home. Then they're on the road on, let me get the schedule up here, on the 27th at Nashville, back home on that Black Friday game versus the New York Rangers. The next night, they're in St. Louis, and then they have 4 days off, which they certainly, hopefully, will have earned with victories by that point. And we talk to you. Well, we need it. 2 games in a row here. It's tough. Colorado, I kind of understood. They're outmanned, outgunned with all that speed. Carolina, they're in that game. But anyway, so we'll be back on Monday the 2nd. Hopefully, the great Dan Silver will be with us. So until then, everybody, thanks for listening tonight, and take care.